What is beautyism and how does it affect you? This is co-creation from cocreation.com.
Which is koecreation.com.
And I'm Cathy Bartoli from the Intimacy Dojo. So beautyism is a way that people look at the value of a person based on how conventionally pretty they are, how much they match what we see in media, on TV, and the magazines, which are airbrushed and contorted anyway. So none of us really match that. We couldn't. But when we start seeing people through those kinds of filters, we're not really seeing the value of human beings. We're just seeing, oh, this cookie cutter kind of matches. And we don't get to really experience people.
Precisely. I've also found beautyism to be a lot about how I get interacted with in the world and how people perceive me, giving me benefit or not really giving me opportunity in a lot of different realms, both through social...
make assumptions based on what you look like.
Precisely. Making assumptions, not only like as to making assumptions about my physicality, about my brain, and about how I'm going to interact back with them.
Right.
So all sorts of preconceptions around my whole identity based on the skin that I'm in.
Yeah. And that doesn't let people be, part of being a sex geek is to be self-expressed and to see people for who they are and letting them be expressed however they want, whether they choose to or happen to be more conventionally fit what the mold is. Because I think in the 1800s in Italy, I would have been like the really pretty one, and you'd be here talking about how skinny you were and how the guys were just passing you by.
True enough.
So like that changes all the time. It's not, because we're immersed in it, we tend to think, of course, this is what is pretty. But there's been a lot of studies that show that what we're constantly exposed to, we tune into. And we are constantly exposed to these models that are often anorexic or bulimic, but like trying to force their body into what the airbrush people are trying to make them be. So we get tuned to that.
Yeah. You also asked what is beautyism, and you mentioned that the models and projections that we have in our society, in Western society and first world Western society that we have around beauty are things that we would label as skinny. I'm also going to say things like having clear skin, having symmetry to your face, having like even limbs and fully able bodies.
And sadly, lighter skin often.
Very often, lighter skin. And for and for people who present more feminine, I have found there's a lot of hyper femininity that happens.
And if you look feminine and act in a way that doesn't match that box, there's a lot of judgment and a lot of shaming that goes on about it. So, and if you're supposed to look a certain way if you appear to be female or if you appear to be male.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So I think that it's not only like the act of how people... I think that it's not only how people are interacting with you, but how much you hit this perceived marker based on all of those perceptions that we have, which to me has turned out to be very stressful, trying to hit this mark again and again and again every day, because it's also, when you do ascribe to a certain amount of femininity in your life, there's a lot of work involved.
With your acting and modeling background, of course, like you were trained into it, and it's a moving target. If you get to there, then they want you to get there. I was listening to Brene Brown right now talk about men, worthiness, and shame. It's a great audio program. And she's talking about how we're supposed to fit in and what is expected of a female. And she's saying we all feel shame the same way. Like, it doesn't matter, but we're socialized differently. And that how women we're supposed to be meek, quiet, and we're supposed to put all our available resources to looking pretty. Which is that's a huge investment to try to look like what society says.
Absolutely. So there's a term that I've run into in some more radical spaces around privilege and oppression socially. There's a term called unconventionally gorgeous.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Sort of stating that there is a conventional sort of beauty, as we mentioned with some of those identifiers earlier, but that everybody has a gorgeousness inside of them.
Yeah, and when they own themselves. Like Queen Latifah, I think, is amazing. Because she just, here I am. This is me. Just all of me.
what do you think gorgeousness is? Like, whether it's conventional or not, like, what do you mentioned Queen Latifah. I find that she has a lot of confidence, a lot of gravitas and presence, comfortability in her body and who she is in the world. What do you think?
I think a lot of it, I've been studying shame and trauma for years because it's something that I grew up immersed in. Yeah. And for me, shame is toxic. Shame is not attractive. When we feel ashamed of ourselves, that makes us unattractive to other people. There's like an energy of repulsion around us. And when I weighed 130 pounds and felt incredibly fat, even though I was in incredibly good shape doing marathon canoe races, that shame kept people away because I felt like I didn't look like the models. My stomach could puff out, so I wasn't skinny enough. And I feel like I have less shame now at over 300 pounds and am probably more attractive to people that are willing to like really connect rather than look for cookie cutters that match. I really think it's about the shame and the presence, and are you willing to own yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Shame eats so many different parts of ourselves.
It's corrosive.
It is. It is. I think that gorgeousness is a lot about radiating whatever is going on inside of you. And so in that way, like, shame doesn't necessarily emit really positive vibes. Yeah. But things like confidence, which is work that I do in my practice, is finding those internal spots of confidence and using the tools that we have to help exude that. Makes us feel better. But it also does things like when you're feeling more confident, feeling more at home in your body, you have less stress. Yes. Stress does things like gives your face and your skin an uneven tone.
You don't glow when you're full of stress.
Precisely. It makes your hair more brittle. Like, these are things that, again, I learned in my acting and modeling training, that when you're feeling unhealthy in your body, that it's exuding physically from you, which is sort of a self-perpetuating cycle, because then you feel like you're missing that mark over and over again. Even if you're all trussed up and you've got all your makeup on and you've got your fancy dress on, you don't exude that positivity. Yeah,
I love that. I'd like to come back and talk a little bit about those skills that you talk about for bringing that confidence out, because I think people would love to hear it. Realize that beautyism is part of our culture, but being aware of it is a huge key to dismantling it. And the more you become aware and notice it, like, oh, I'm being judged on this one aspect of me and I have thousands, it gives you a lot of freedom. So,
very well said.
Come back. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Congratulations on taking this time for yourself and learning these things. If you'd like to follow more of this, you can subscribe to my channel here. Social media is up here, and there's more videos of this type here. See you soon.